How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, I want to first and foremost thank Lisa Cabrera for emailing me an article about Clarence Thomas. Now, many responsible or real good bloggers will follow different stories or events out on the world stage. And so it's just ironic that Clarence Thomas' wife has been someone I've been following for well over a year. And she's a problem child. And so what sparked me was there was a rumor out that she had chartered 80 buses when all the drama that went down in D.C. The mega rally, the insurrection. I mean, they got various names for it. Well, that turned out, based on my research, because y'all know I'll research the hell out of something, that it wasn't true. But I said something has to be going on with this woman for even a rumor to be put out. So I said I'm gonna start paying attention. And sometimes when events are going on, I'm not the first to jump at it because I want to give y'all sweet, extra juicy nuggets. So I'll wait. There's a number of stories that I'm going to bring to y'all that I've been waiting on. One of them I've been waiting on for almost 3 years. That's going to come forth. And I said it'll take on a life itself, and I can give you a broader, bigger picture because I want this channel to remain very unique. So like I said, you never know what you're going to get over here. So as I was following her, I happened to watch a documentary on Anita Hill. And the way the documentary starts out, Anita Hill plays a voice recording from her office, and it's Clarence Thomas' wife saying, "You basically owe me an apology." And she said this woman been messing with her for years. I said, okay, she dusty and she greasy, very, very greasy. And so there was also this white woman that had said something very racist and her ass got fired. Well, she lived with Clarence Thomas and his wife well over a year. I said, okay, that's interesting. All right. But I don't want her to present that. So it's just ironic that today I'm able to really give y'all a real sweet, juicy nugget. You can see that this video is quite long. And so I have nothing to read. I have a video to play, and then I have a very long audio to play. And it's juicy. Very, very juicy. So, as of today, it has came out that Clarence Thomas' wife, they call her Jenny, has admitted that she was down there at the state capitol. But she's claiming that it was unquote cold. She didn't play no part of setting it up, and she went on home. That's what she claimed. Now, I want y'all to do your own thinking. The enemy don't hold theirself accountable for shit. But she was smoked out. So there's something else that is going on. She put a spotlight on her racist ass. And she was left no other choice. Because I know she didn't lawyer it up for whatever is going on behind the scene. Because trust and believe, more is going to come out. Now, anybody that's new to the True Royal family or my backup channel, True Royal, we're going on the 4th year of this now. 4 years ago, Yahweh clearly told me this, and many of y'all have heard this before, but I got new people, a lot of new people. I get visions, like many in the royal family. And it's quite interesting to me how I get my visions. I rarely get them in dreams. I can literally just be walking, doing something mundane, and Yahweh will just start speaking to me. And he said this to me, that the white woman would be the first to get his wrath. And that does not exclude the white man because he upheld her shit. That it was that clear. Okay, I've been talking about there is a cost messing with royalty. And I've been talking about the age of exposure. I've been talking about Big Brother is watching you, but the enemy never factored in that they would be watched too. I repeat myself a lot, but it's necessary because other people are coming on my royal family. So be patient with me, and I truly appreciate y'all giving up your time on this very lengthy premiere. So we're going to get into it, but I'm going to set the stage, okay? So let's listen to this first video, and then we're going to get in a very long article. So you really need to go get your shit. Now, anybody that's new to my channels, always have your shit on deck. That be your weed, your wine, whatever you drink, whatever you eat, and lean all up in it.
As President Biden prepares to nominate a new justice to the Supreme Court, tonight we're taking a closer look at a brewing controversy over ethics on the bench. A bedrock principle of the justice system in this country is that judges avoid even the appearance of conflict of interest. But new reporting on Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife, Virginia, is raising questions about where that line is drawn and how it's enforced. Devin Dwyer covers the Supreme Court for us and has this report.
The Supreme Court's most senior justice, Clarence Thomas,
Do you solemnly swear?
has long been a conservative icon and liberal target. Now, a New Yorker magazine report is raising new questions over the activism of his wife of 34 years, Virginia Thomas.
I think the clear focus is to stop the Obama agenda.
A longtime political consultant who's lobbied for some of the same conservative causes, like abortion, gun rights, and religious freedom, that have long been before the High Court.
Ginny Thomas's activities are different from any other spouse in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court. She is more activist in political causes than any other spouse.
Thomas, who goes by Ginny, says she's battled for conservative principles for more than 3 decades, regularly advising fellow activists through her firm Liberty Consulting and at conservative conferences.
America is in a vicious battle for its founding principles. May we all have guns and concealed carry to handle what's coming by the way.
Emails obtained by watchdog group American Oversight show Thomas maintains a network of powerful contacts, including Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. In a message to his office last summer, not independently confirmed by ABC, she suggests Justice Thomas was also in touch with the governor on various things.
She's been outspoken about affirmative action, which is before the court. She's been outspoken about the January 6th committee, which is before the court.
And we're going to the Capitol.
On January 6th last year, before violence broke out at the Capitol, Ginny Thomas, who had direct access to the Trump White House, was cheering on the president's supporters, challenging the electoral vote count, writing on Facebook that morning, "God bless each of you standing up or praying." While 733 Americans now face federal charges for their conduct later that day, Thomas joined an open letter in December calling congressional investigation of the attack by a Democrat-led committee a political persecution.
They are viciously and unconstitutionally using the federal, local, and state governments to prosecute and silence.
It's a view shared by former President Trump, who asked the Supreme Court earlier this year to block the committee's request for his records. Last month, the court declined over the objection of only one justice, Clarence Thomas. Is there any evidence, clear evidence, that he's been influenced in a specific decision based on his wife's activities?
I don't think there's any clear evidence, but Thomas was that lone vote. And again, he did not write to explain himself, so we don't actually know why he wished to take up the case.
There are no clear guidelines governing the activities of a justice's spouse, but there are rules about federal judges avoiding conflicts of interest, requiring them to recuse from cases whenever their impartiality might be reasonably questioned. And who enforces the law when it comes to Supreme Court justices?
So there's no way to enforce these laws, right? I mean, there's the court of public opinion, but the only way to punish a Supreme Court justice is through impeachment and removal, and no justice has ever been impeached and removed.
With public approval of the Supreme Court sliding to a historic low, scrutiny of the justices' potential financial or political conflicts in cases has been growing. Ginny Thomas is not named in any case on the court's docket, nor is any group she's known to be part of. The Thomases did not respond to ABC's request for comment, but the justice has publicly vowed independence.
We've gotten to a point in the society where we're really good at finding something that separates us from others.
And the Thomases' supporters see a double standard in the renewed scrutiny.
There's always attempts on the left to manufacture grounds to recuse conservative justices from cases. This strikes me as just another round of those attempts.
In 2011, federal appeals court Judge Stephen Reinhart, a top liberal jurist, declined to recuse from a case involving California's ban on same-sex marriage. That despite the fact that his wife was a leader at the ACLU, which had filed an amicus brief challenging the ban. Reinhart insisting at the time her views regarding issues of public significance are her own.
I think we live in a world where women should be able to be strong, be active, and be participants in public discourse, and that shouldn't be viewed as something that necessarily reflects on exactly what their husband thinks or how he's going to behave as well.
For the most part, spouses of the justices have tended to steer clear from the work of the court.
My wife does not give me any advice about cooking, and I do not give her any advice about the law.
But when the justices take up a major case on affirmative action later this year, they'll consider the views of the National Association of Scholars. The conservative nonprofit opposes the use of race in college admissions. Ginny Thomas sits on its advisory board.
It's absolutely okay that Justice Breyer's wife worked at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. It's absolutely fine that Jane Roberts is a legal recruiter during Chief Justice Roberts' tenure. And it's totally fine, too, that Ginny Thomas has a political consulting firm. But we need to look, again, at those closest to the justices. If you appear to be against someone or something, then you shouldn't be judging that someone or something.
ABC News has learned ethics watchdog Fix the Court has asked the Supreme Court clerk to strike the NAS brief from the record. It comes as a new ABC News Ipsos poll finds more Americans believe partisan political views rather than the basis of law are driving the justices' decisions. Chief Justice John Roberts acknowledging late last year that public trust is essential, not incidental to the court's function, but he opposes efforts to set a new ethics code.
I do think that it could help the justices regain a little bit of the lost kind of public trust and credibility, just to say, look, we ourselves are bound by some ethical guidelines that another body has imposed on us. And so far, the court as an institution has been unwilling to sign on to that.
A court at a crossroads and facing new questions about its politics as it prepares for partisan battle over a new justice and the major decisions still ahead.
All right, my royal
Hi, everyone.
family.
Joe Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the...
So, based on that video, we ain't no damn fools that Clarence Thomas' wife has a great deal of influence over his thinking. All right? She runs him. Like I said, I've been researching her and following him. And because of her actions and him still being a nigger to the enemy, they're going to look at him further. Now, I'm not saying if they're going to do it one way or the other, but they're saying that basically if they do find some findings they could possibly impeach him. We in America, anything is possible. Now, wouldn't that be ironic how he got in? And if he possibly go out based on who's running his household, who wears the pants in the family. But see, this is all about another thing that I had said years ago, that the white woman would be wailing in the streets of America like the black woman. And we're seeing examples of that. We're seeing that. See, the enemy don't have control over his woman. He'll go out in the wilderness and hunt and kill and destroy whatever and bring meat to the table. And then when he walks in his household, you a male chauvinist pig. There's no harmony in their households. Trust and believe that. So now, my royal family, we're going to get into something quite long that knocked me down, that they had put this on the New Yorker this year. And I was so happy that I didn't have to read this article, because it's slightly over 50 minutes, but it's deep. It's real deep. So let's listen, my royal family.
Autumn presents
A Reporter at Large, published in the print issue of The New Yorker with the headline, "Is Ginny Thomas a Threat to the Supreme Court?" Written by Jane Mayer, read by Julia Whalen. In December, Chief Justice John Roberts released his year-end report on the federal judiciary. According to a recent Gallup poll, the Supreme Court has its lowest public approval rating in history, in part because it is viewed as being overly politicized. President Joe Biden recently established a bipartisan commission to consider reforms to the court, and members of Congress have introduced legislation that would require justices to adhere to the same types of ethics standards as other judges. Roberts's report, however, defiantly warned everyone to back off. The judiciary's power to manage its internal affairs insulates courts from inappropriate political influence, he wrote. His statement followed a series of defensive speeches from members of the court's conservative wing, which now holds a supermajority of 6-3. Last fall, Justice Clarence Thomas, in an address at Notre Dame, accused the media of spreading the false notion that the justices are merely politicians in robes. Such criticism, he said, makes it sound as though you are just always going right to your personal preference, adding, "They think you become like a politician." The claim that the justices' opinions are politically neutral is becoming increasingly hard to accept, especially from Thomas, whose wife, Virginia Ginny Thomas, is a vocal right-wing activist. She has declared that America is in existential danger because of the deep state and the fascist left, which includes transsexual fascists. Thomas, a lawyer who runs a small political lobbying firm, Liberty Consulting, has become a prominent member of various hardline groups. Ginny Thomas's political activism has caused controversy for years. For the most part, it has been dismissed as the harmless action of an independent spouse. But now the court appears likely to secure victories for her allies in a number of highly polarizing cases on abortion, affirmative action, and gun rights. Many Americans first became aware of Ginny Thomas's activism on January 6, 2021. That morning, before the Stop the Steal rally in Washington, D.C. turned into an assault on the Capitol, resulting in the deaths of at least 5 people, she cheered on the supporters of President Donald Trump who had gathered to overturn Biden's election. In a Facebook post that went viral, she linked to a news item about the protest, writing, "Love MAGA people." Shortly afterward, she posted about Ronald Reagan's famous "A Time for Choosing" speech. Her next status update said, "God bless each of you standing up or praying." 2 days after the insurrection, she added a disclaimer to her feed, noting that she'd written the posts "before violence in U.S. Capitol." The posts are no longer public. Later that January, the Washington Post revealed that she had also been agitating about Trump's loss on a private listserv, Thomas Clerk World, which includes former law clerks of Justice Thomas's. The online discussion had been contentious. John Eastman, a former Thomas clerk and a key instigator of the lie that Trump actually won in 2020, was on the same side as Ginny Thomas, and he drew rebukes. According to the Post, Thomas eventually apologized to the group for causing internal rancor. Artemis Ward, a political scientist at Northern Illinois University and a co-author of Sorcerer's Apprentices, A History of Supreme Court Clerks, believes that the incident confirmed her outsized role. Virginia Thomas has direct access to Thomas's clerks, Ward said. Clarence Thomas is now the court's senior member, having served for 30 years, and Ward estimates that there are something like 120 people on that listserv. In Ward's view, they comprise an elite right-wing commando movement. Justice Thomas, he says, doesn't post on the listserv, but his wife is advocating for things directly. Ward added, "It's unprecedented. I have never seen a justice's wife as involved." Clarence and Ginny Thomas declined to be interviewed for this article. In recent years, Justice Thomas, long one of the court's most reticent members, has been speaking up more in oral arguments. His wife, meanwhile, has become less publicly visible, but she has remained busy, aligning herself with many activists who have brought issues in front of the court. She has been one of the directors of CNP Action, a dark money wing of the conservative pressure group, the Council for National Policy. CNP Action, behind closed doors, connects wealthy donors with some of the most radical right-wing figures in America. Ginny Thomas has also been on the advisory board of Turning Point USA, a pro-Trump student group whose founder, Charlie Kirk, boasted of sending busloads of protesters to Washington on January 6th. Stephen Gillers, a law professor at NYU and a prominent judicial ethicist, told me, "I think Ginny Thomas is behaving horribly, and she's hurt the Supreme Court and the administration of justice. It's reprehensible. If you could take a secret poll of the other 8 justices, I have no doubt that they are appalled by Virginia Thomas's behavior. But what can they do?" Gillers thinks that the Supreme Court should be bound by a code of conduct, just as all lower court judges in the federal system are. That code requires a judge to recuse himself from hearing any case in which personal entanglements could lead a fair-minded member of the public to question his impartiality. Gillers stressed that it's an appearance test, adding, "It doesn't require an actual conflict. The reason we use an appearance test is because we say the appearance of justice is as important as the fact of justice itself." The Constitution offers only one remedy for misconduct on the Supreme Court: impeachment. This was attempted once in 1804, but it resulted in an acquittal, underscoring the independence of the judicial branch. Since then, only one justice, Abe Fortas, has been forced to step down. He resigned in 1969 after members of Congress threatened to impeach him over alleged financial conflicts of interest. Another justice, William O. Douglas, an environmental activist, pushed the limits of propriety by serving on the board of the Sierra Club. In 1962, he resigned from the board, acknowledging that there was a chance the group would engage in litigation that could reach the court. The historian Douglas Brinkley, who is writing a book about the environmental movement, told me, "I think Bobby and Jack Kennedy told Douglas to cool his jets." In recent years, Democrats have been trying to impose stronger ethics standards on the justices, a response, in part, to what Justice Sonia Sotomayor has described as the stench of partisanship on the court. In 2016, Republicans in Congress, in an unprecedented act, refused to let President Barack Obama fill a vacancy on the court. Trump subsequently pushed through the appointment of 3 hardline conservative justices. Last summer, Democrats in Congress introduced a bill that would require the Judicial Conference of the United States to create a binding code of conduct for members of the Supreme Court. They also proposed legislation that would require more disclosures about the financial backers behind amicus briefs, arguments submitted by friends of the court who are supporting one side in a case. So far, these proposals haven't gone anywhere, but Gillers notes that there are extant laws circumscribing the ethical behavior of all federal judges, including the justices. Arguably, Clarence Thomas has edged unusually close to testing them. All judges, even those on the court, are required to recuse themselves from any case in which their spouse is a party to the proceeding or is an officer, director, or trustee of an organization that is a party to a case. Ginny Thomas has not been a named party in any case on the court's docket, nor is she litigating in any such case. But she has held leadership positions at conservative pressure groups that have either been involved in cases before the court or have had members engaged in such cases. In 2019, she announced a political project called Crowdsourcers and said that one of her 4 partners would be the founder of Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. Project Veritas tries to embarrass progressives by making secret videos of them, and last year petitioned the court to enjoin Massachusetts from enforcing a state law that bans the surreptitious taping of public officials. Another partner in Crowdsourcers, Ginny Thomas said in her announcement, was Cleta Mitchell, the chairman of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, a conservative election law nonprofit. It, too, has had business before the court, filing amicus briefs in cases centering on the democratic process. Thomas also currently serves on the advisory board of the National Association of Scholars, a group promoting conservative values in academia, which has filed an amicus brief before the court in a potentially groundbreaking affirmative action lawsuit against Harvard. And, though nobody knew it at the time, Ginny Thomas was an undisclosed paid consultant at the conservative pressure group the Center for Security Policy, when its founder, Frank Gaffney, submitted an amicus brief to the court supporting Trump's Muslim travel ban. Bruce Green, a professor at Fordham specializing in legal ethics, notes, "In the 21st century, there's a feeling that spouses are not joined at the hip." He concedes, though, that the appearance created by Ginny Thomas's political pursuits is awful. They look like a mom-and-pop political hack group, where she does the political stuff and he does the judging. It's hard to imagine, he told me, that the couple doesn't discuss court cases. She's got the ear of a justice, and surely they talk about their work. But, from the technical standpoint of judicial ethics, she's slightly removed from all these cases. She's not actually the legal director. Green feels that the conflict of interest is close, but not close enough to require that Thomas recuse himself. David Lubon, a professor of law and philosophy at Georgetown who specializes in legal ethics, is more concerned. He told me, if Ginny Thomas is intimately involved, financially or ideologically tied to the litigant, that strikes me as slicing the bologna a little thin. When Clarence Thomas met Ginny Lamp in 1986, he was an ambitious black conservative in charge of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and she was even more conservative and better connected than he was. Her father ran a firm that developed housing in and around Omaha, and her parents were party activists who had formed the backbone of Barry Goldwater's campaign in Nebraska. The writer Kurt Anderson, who grew up across the street from the family, recalls, her parents were the roots of the modern, crazy Republican Party. My parents were Goldwater Republicans, but even they thought the Lamp family was nuts. Ginny graduated from Creighton University in Omaha and then attended law school there. Her parents helped get her a job with a local Republican candidate for Congress, and when he won, she followed him to Washington. But after reportedly flunking the bar exam, she fell in with a cultish self-help group, LifeSpring, whose members were encouraged to strip naked and mock one another's body fat. She eventually broke away and began working for the Chamber of Commerce, opposing comparable worth pay for women. She and Thomas began dating, and in 1987 they married. As a woman clashing with the women's movement, she had found much in common with Thomas, who opposed causes supported by many Black Americans. At Thomas's extraordinarily contentious Supreme Court confirmation hearings in 1991, Anita Hill credibly accused him of having sexually harassed her when she was working at the EEOC. Ginny Thomas later likened the experience to being stuck inside a scalding furnace. Even before then, a friend told the Washington Post, the couple was so bonded that the one person Clarence really listens to is Virginia. Ginny Thomas had wanted to run for Congress, but once her husband was on the Supreme Court, she reportedly felt professionally stuck. She moved through various jobs, including one at the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. In 2010, she launched her lobbying firm, Liberty Consulting. Her website quotes a client saying that she is able to give access to any door in Washington. 4 years ago, Ginny Thomas inaugurated the Impact Awards, an annual ceremony to honor courageous cultural warriors battling the radical ideologues on the left who use manipulation, mobs, and deceit for their ends. She presented the awards at luncheons paid for by United in Purpose, a nonprofit that mobilizes conservative evangelical voters. Many of the recipients have served on boards or committees with Ginny Thomas, and quite a few have had business in front of the Supreme Court, either filing amicus briefs or submitting petitions asking that the justices hear cases. At the 2019 event, Ginny Thomas praised one of that year's recipients, Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood employee who became an anti-abortion activist, for her riveting indictment of Planned Parenthood's propagation of lies. That year, Thomas also gave a prize to Mark Meadows, then a hardline Republican in Congress, describing him as the leader in the House right now that we were waiting for. Meadows, in accepting the award, said, "Ginny was talking about how we team up, and we actually have teamed up. And I'm going to give you something you won't hear anywhere else. We worked through the first 5 days of the impeachment hearings." Thomas's decision to bestow prizes on Johnson and Meadows underscores the complicated overlaps between her work and her husband's. In 2020, Johnson, a year after receiving an Impact Award, filed with the court an amicus brief supporting restrictions on abortion in Louisiana. Last year, Johnson participated in the January 6th protests, and the insurrection has since become the object of much litigation, some of which will likely end up before the court. Last month, she went on Fox News and said that a couple of the liberal justices, she singled out Justice Sotomayor by name, had been idiotic during oral arguments in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the Mississippi abortion case now under consideration by the Supreme Court. Johnson didn't respond to requests for comment. Soon after Ginny Thomas gave Mark Meadows an Impact Award, he became Trump's chief of staff. This past December, he refused to comply with a subpoena from the House Select Committee that is investigating the Capitol attack. Cleta Mitchell, who advised Trump on how to contest Biden's electoral victory, received an Impact Award in 2018. She has moved to block a committee subpoena of her phone records. The House of Representatives recently voted to send the Justice Department a referral recommending that it charge Meadows with criminal contempt of Congress. The same thing may well happen to Mitchell. It seems increasingly likely that some of Ginny Thomas's Impact Award recipients will end up as parties before the Supreme Court. The Justice Department has so far charged more than 700 people in connection with the insurrection. and Attorney General Merrick Garland has said that the federal government will prosecute people at any level who may have instigated the riots, perhaps even Trump. On January 19th, the Supreme Court rejected the former president's request that it intervene to stop the congressional committee from accessing his records. Justice Thomas was the lone justice to dissent. Meadows had filed an amicus brief in support of Trump. Ginny Thomas, meanwhile, has denounced the very legitimacy of the congressional committee. On December 15th, she and 62 other prominent conservatives signed an open letter to Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, demanding that the House Republican Conference excommunicate Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger for their egregious willingness to serve on the committee. The statement was issued by an advocacy group called the Conservative Action Project, of which Ginny Thomas has described herself as an active member. The group's statement excoriated the congressional investigation as a partisan political persecution of private citizens who have done nothing wrong, and accused the committee of serving improperly issued subpoenas. A current member of the Conservative Action Project told me that Ginny Thomas is part of the group not because of her qualifications, but because she's married to Clarence. The member asked to have his name withheld because, he said, Ginny is volatile and becomes edgy when challenged. He added, the best word to describe her is tribal. You're either part of her group or you're the enemy. Ginny Thomas has her own links to the January 6th insurrection. Her website, which touts her consulting acumen, features a glowing testimonial from Kimberly Fletcher, the president of a group called Moms for America. Ginny's ability to make connections and communicate with folks on the ground, as well as on Capitol Hill, is most impressive. Fletcher spoke at 2 protests in Washington on January 5, 2021, promoting the falsehood that the 2020 election was fraudulent. At the first, which she planned, Fletcher praised the previous speaker, Representative Mary Miller, a freshman Republican from Illinois, saying, "Amen." Other people who heard Miller's speech called for her resignation. She declared, "Hitler was right on one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future." At the second protest, not far from the Trump International Hotel, Fletcher declared that when her children and grandchildren one day asked her, "Where were you when the Republic was on the verge of collapse?" she would answer, "I was right there, fighting to my last breath to save it." Vivian Brown, who returned a call to Moms for America, said that she would not discuss Fletcher's testimonial for Ginny Thomas or clarify whether Fletcher had been Thomas's business client, but the record suggests that the two have been political associates for more than a decade. A program from Liberty Expo and Symposium, a 2010 convention that has been described as the largest conservative training event in history, indicates that Fletcher and Thomas co-hosted a Remember the Ladies banquet. A list of other speakers at the symposium includes Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, an extremist militia group. Rhodes was arrested earlier this month and charged, along with 10 associates, with seditious conspiracy for allegedly plotting to halt the congressional certification of Biden's electoral win by storming the Capitol. Rhodes has pleaded not guilty. Another organizer of the January 6th uprising, who has been subpoenaed by the Congressional Committee, Ali Alexander, also has long-standing ties to Ginny Thomas. Like Fletcher, Alexander spoke at a rally in Washington the night before the riot, leading a chant of "Victory or Death." A decade ago, Alexander was a participant in Groundswell, a secretive, invitation-only network that, among other things, coordinated with hard-right congressional aides, journalists, and pressure groups to launch attacks against Obama and against less conservative Republicans. As recently as 2019, Ginny Thomas described herself as the chairman of Groundswell, which, according to documents first published by Mother Jones, sees itself as waging a 30-front war seeking to fundamentally transform the nation. As Carolee Coons of the media watchdog Crooks and Liars has noted, several Groundswell members, including Steve Bannon and Sebastian Gorka, the fringe foreign policy analyst, went on to form the far-right flank of the Trump administration. Both Bannon and Gorka were eventually pushed out. According to Ginny Thomas's biography in the Council for National Policy's membership book, she remains active in Groundswell. A former participant told me that Thomas chairs weekly meetings. Norman Eisen, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, who between 2009 and 2011 served as the special counsel and special assistant to the president for ethics and government reform, told me that it is hard to understand how Justice Thomas can be impartial when hearing cases related to the upheaval on January 6th in light of his wife's documented affiliation with January 6th instigators and Stop the Steal organizers. He argues that Justice Thomas should recuse himself, given his wife's interests in the outcome of these cases. Gillers of NYU and other legal scholars say that there is little chance of such a recusal. Justice Thomas has recused himself at least once before from a 1996 case involving a military academy that his son was attending. But, as Eisen observed, though Ginny Thomas's activism has attracted criticism for years, Clarence Thomas has never acknowledged it as a conflict of interest. Recusals on the Supreme Court are extremely rare, in part because substitutes are not permitted, as they are for judges on lower courts. Yet several other justices have stepped aside from cases to avoid even the appearance of misconduct. Justice Stephen Breyer recuses himself from any case that has been heard by his brother, Charles Breyer, a federal judge in the Northern District of California. It's about the appearance of impropriety, Charles Breyer told me. Lay people would think you would favor your brother over the merits of the case. It's done to make people believe that the Supreme Court is not influenced by relationships. Justice Breyer also recused himself from a case involving the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute because his wife had previously worked there. Charles Breyer told me that although justices sometimes might have a right not to recuse, that doesn't change the question, which is, how does that affect the appearance of impropriety? When I asked him whether the justices confront one another about potential conflicts of interest, he said, "My guess is that they don't discuss it. They leave it entirely up to the independent judgment. They wouldn't dare suggest recusal. It's part of the way they get along with one another." In 2021, Justice Brett Kavanaugh recused himself, without explanation, from a case apparently related to a family member. According to Gabe Roth, the executive director of Fix the Court, a nonprofit advocating for reforms to the federal judiciary, an amicus brief had been filed by a cosmetics trade association that Kavanaugh's father used to run. The spouses of other justices have taken steps to avoid creating conflicts of interest in the first place. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg joined the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, her husband, Martin Ginsburg, then one of the country's most successful tax lawyers, left his law firm and turned to teaching. After John Roberts was nominated to be a justice, his wife, Jane Sullivan Roberts, retired from practicing law and resigned from a leadership role in Feminists for Life, an anti-abortion group. In 2004, Justice Antonin Scalia famously defended his decision to continue presiding over a case that involved former Vice President Dick Cheney after it was revealed that the two men had gone duck hunting together while the case was in the court's docket. Scalia argued, in essence, that Washington is a small town where important people tend to socialize. But in 2003, Scalia recused himself in a case addressing whether the mention of God in the Pledge of Allegiance violated the Constitution's separation of church and state because, several months before oral arguments began, he'd given a speech belittling the litigants' arguments. Ginny Thomas has complained that she and her husband have received more criticism than have two well-known liberal jurists with politically active spouses. Marjorie O. Rendell continued to serve on the appeals court in Pennsylvania, while her husband at the time, Ed Rendell, served as the state's governor. Stephen Reinhart, an appeals court judge in California, declined to recuse himself from cases in which the American Civil Liberties Union was involved, even though his wife, Ramona Ripston, led a branch of the group in Southern California. Ethics standards may be changing, however. Cornelia T.L. Pillard, a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, currently handles a spousal conflict of interest more rigorously. She is married to David Cole, the National Legal Director for the ACLU, and recuses herself from any case in which the ACLU has been involved, whether at a national or local level, and regardless of whether her husband worked on the case. Roth of Fix the Court told me that there is an evident need for a clearer and more exacting recusal standard at the Supreme Court, especially now, as it's constantly being thrust into partisan battles and as the public's faith in its impartiality is waning. Traditionally, judges have not been particularly fastidious about potential conflicts of interest connected to amicus briefs, but that standard may be changing too. As the number of partisan political issues facing the judicial branch has grown, so has the number of these briefs. Many of them are being filed by opaquely funded dark money groups whose true financial sponsors are concealed, thus enabling invisible thumbs to press on the scales of justice. Paul Collins, a political scientist at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, who has studied the use of amicus briefs, told me, "There's been an almost linear increase in the number of them since the World War II era. Now, it's the rare case that doesn't have one. The reason," he said, "is that more and more the courts are seen as a venue for social change." He explained that political groups, many with secret donors, are using the courts the way they used to use Congress. Basically, amicus briefs are a means of lobbying. The problem has become so widespread that in 2018, the rules for appellate court judges were amended to make it possible for judges to strike any amicus brief that might force them to recuse themselves. There has been no such reckoning at the Supreme Court, not even when close political associates of Ginny Thomas's have filed amicus briefs. One such associate is Frank Gaffney, a defense hawk best known for having made feverish claims suggesting that Obama is a Muslim and that Saddam Hussein's regime was involved in the Oklahoma City bombings. Leaked documents show that Gaffney was a colleague of Ginny Thomas's at Groundswell as far back as 2013. Gaffney was a proponent of Trump's reactionary immigration policies, including, most vociferously, one of the administration's Muslim travel ban. As these restrictions were hit by lawsuits, Gaffney's nonprofit, the Center for Security Policy, signed the first of two big contracts with Liberty Consulting. According to documents that Gaffney's group filed with the IRS, in 2017 and 2018, it paid Ginny Thomas a total of more than $200,000. It's not entirely clear where Gaffney's nonprofit got the funds to hire Liberty Consulting. Gaffney didn't respond to interview requests. But according to David Armiak, the research director at the Center for Media and Democracy, which tracks nonprofit political spending, one of the biggest donors to Gaffney's group in 2017 was a pro-Trump political organization, Making America Great, whose chairman, the heiress Rebecca Mercer, was among Trump's biggest backers. While $200,000 was being passed from Trump backers to Gaffney to Ginny Thomas, the Supreme Court agreed to hear legal challenges to Trump's travel restrictions. In August 2017, Gaffney and 6 other advocates submitted an amicus brief to the court in support of the restrictions, arguing that the challenge of Islam must be confronted. That December, as the case was still playing out, Ginny Thomas bestowed one of her impact awards on Gaffney. introducing him as an encourager to me and a great friend, but giving no hint that his group was paying her firm. The impact ceremony was held at the Trump International Hotel, and according to another guest, Jerry Johnson, Justice Thomas was in attendance. Johnson later recalled that the justice sat in front of him and was a happy warrior, pleased to be watching his wife running the meeting. Throughout the 2017 and 2018 sessions, as various challenges to the travel restrictions were considered by the court, Justice Thomas consistently took a hard pro-Trump line. Finally, in June 2018, Thomas and 4 other justices narrowly upheld the final version of the restrictions. It's impossible to know whether Thomas was influenced by his wife's lucrative contract with Gaffney, by Gaffney's amicus brief, or by her celebration of Gaffney at the awards ceremony. Given the justice's voting history, it's reasonable to surmise that he would have supported the travel restrictions no matter what. Nevertheless, the lawyers on the losing side of the case surely would have wanted to know about Ginny Thomas's financial contract with Gaffney. Judges, in their annual financial disclosures, are required to report the source of their spouse's incomes. But Justice Thomas, in his disclosures in 2017 and 2018, failed to mention the payments from Gaffney's group. Instead, he put down a curiously low book value for his wife's lobbying firm, claiming in both years that her company was worth only between $15,000 and $50,000. Roth, of Fix the Court, told me that at the very least, Justice Thomas should be asked to amend his financial statements from those years, as he did in 2011, after it became public that he hadn't disclosed the $686,000 that his wife had earned at the Heritage Foundation between 2003 and 2007. Beyond that, Roth said, the justices should, as a rule, disqualify themselves from cases in which a family member or the family member's employer has filed an amicus brief. In Congress, the Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island is pushing for reform. Amicus briefs, he told me, are a form of lobbying that has 2 terrible aspects. The interests behind them are hidden, and they are astonishingly effective in terms of the win rate. He added, they open up real avenues for secret mischief. In January 2019, Ginny Thomas secured for Gaffney the access that her website promises. As Maggie Haberman of The Times and Jonathan Swan of Axios have reported, not long after Clarence and Ginny Thomas had a private dinner at the White House with Donald and Melania Trump, the president's staff gave in to a months-long campaign by Ginny to bring her, Gaffney, and several other associates to the White House to press the president on policy and personnel issues. The White House was not informed that Gaffney's group had been paying Liberty Consulting for the previous 2 years. Gaffney's group did not report signing a contract with Liberty Consulting for 2019. The White House meeting was held in the Roosevelt Room, and by all accounts, it was uncomfortable. Thomas opened by saying that she didn't trust everyone in the room, then pressed Trump to purge his administration of disloyal members of the deep state, handing him an enemies list that she and Groundswell had compiled. Some of the participants prayed, warning that gay marriage, which the Supreme Court legalized in 2015, was undermining morals in America. One participant told me he'd heard that Trump had wanted to humor Ginny Thomas because he was hoping to talk her husband into retiring, thus opening up another court seat. Trump, given his manifold legal problems, also saw Justice Thomas as a potentially important ally, and genuinely liked him. But the participant told me that the president considered Ginny Thomas a wacko, adding, she never would have been there if not for Clarence. She had access because her last name was Thomas. Ginny Thomas rarely speaks to mainstream reporters, but she often gives speeches in private forums. The website of the watchdog, Documented, has posted a video of her speaking with striking candor. In October 2018, she led a panel discussion during a confidential session of the Council for National Policy. At the time, the Senate was caught up in the fight over the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, who had been accused of sexual assault. "I'm feeling the pain. Clarence is feeling the pain of going through false charges against a good man," she said. "I thought it couldn't get worse than Clarence's, but it did. America," she said, "is in a vicious battle for its founding principles," adding, "The deep state is serious and it's resisting President Trump." She declared twice that her adversaries were trying to kill people and drew applause by saying, "May we all have guns and concealed carry to handle what's coming." This warlike mentality is shared by Groundswell, the political group that Thomas has chaired. In a 2020 session of the Council for National Policy, Rachel Bovard, the senior director of policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, described meeting weekly with Groundswell members to vet officials for disloyalty, saying, "Ginny has been very instrumental in working with the White House. She really is the tip of the spear in these efforts." Bovard lamented Groundswell's failure to weed out the whistleblower Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman before he gave testimony at Trump's first impeachment trial. "We see what happens when we don't vet these people," Bovard said. "That's how we got Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, okay?" Vindman, then the Director for European Affairs on Trump's National Security Council, testified that the president had tried to pressure Ukraine's leaders into producing dirt on Joe Biden's family. In retaliation, a smear campaign was mounted against Vindman. He suddenly found himself fending off false claims that he had created a hostile work environment at the NSC, and fighting insinuations that, because he was born in Ukraine and had been invited to serve in its government, he had dual loyalty. Vindman had self-reported Ukraine's offer, which he had rejected. The Defense Department conducted an internal investigation of the accusations and exonerated him. But, Vindman told me, the attacks harmed my career. He went on, "It's un-American, frankly, that a sitting justice of the Supreme Court, who is supposed to be apolitical, would have a wife who is part of a political vendetta to retaliate against officials who were dutifully serving the public interest. It's chilling, and probably has already had an effect on silencing other whistleblowers." Another target of Groundswell members was Trump's former National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, who was deemed insufficiently supportive of the president. According to The Times, in 2018, Barbara Ladine, a Republican Senate aide who had reportedly developed Groundswell's enemies list with Ginny Thomas, participated in a plot to oust McMaster by secretly taping him bad-mouthing Trump. Ladine, who was a close friend of Ginny Thomas's, told The Times that she'd merely acted as a messenger in the scheme. The plan was to send an undercover female operative to snare McMaster at a fancy restaurant, but McMaster quit before the sting was executed. The Times also reported that another undercover operation, which targeted government employees, including FBI agents suspected of trying to thwart Trump's agenda, involved operatives from Project Veritas, the undercover video group led by James O'Keefe. Ginny Thomas has given O'Keefe an Impact Award, too. It's unclear whether the crowdsourcers project that Thomas said she was launching with O'Keefe's help ever got off the ground. There's little public trace of crowdsourcers, other than a tax filing from 2019 showing that it was developed under the oversight of the Capital Research Center, a right-wing nonprofit that does opposition research. Project Veritas's chief legal officer sent The New Yorker a statement saying that O'Keefe's schedule does not permit such extracurricular activities as crowdsourcers. But in a PowerPoint presentation on the effort in 2019, Thomas said that James O'Keefe wanted to head up a part of the group aimed at protecting our heroes. The purpose of crowdsourcers, she said, was nothing less than saving America. "Our house is on fire," she went on, "and we are stomping ants in the driveway. We're not really focused on the arsonists who are right around us." Last year, Project Veritas asked the Supreme Court to hear its challenge to the Massachusetts ban on surreptitiously taping public officials. The court turned down Project Veritas's petition, as it does with most such requests. Nevertheless, David Danieli, a visiting clinical lecturer at Yale Law School, told me that Ginny Thomas's proclaimed political partnership with O'Keefe and her awarding of a prize to him appeared to be unethical. "That's what the code of conduct is supposed to control," he said. Ginny Thomas has held so many leadership or advisory positions at conservative pressure groups that it's hard to keep track of them. And many, if not all, of these groups have been involved in cases that have come before her husband. Her website lists the National Association of Scholars, the group that has filed an amicus brief in the lawsuit against Harvard, among her endorsed charities. The group's brief claims that the affirmative action policies used by the Harvard admissions department are discriminatory. Though the plaintiffs have already lost in 2 lower courts, they are counting on the Supreme Court's new conservative supermajority to side with them, even though doing so would reverse decades of precedent. Peter Wood, the president of the NAS, is another Impact Award recipient. So too is Robert George, a legal scholar at Princeton, who, according to the NAS's website, serves with Ginny Thomas on its advisory board. He says that he has not been active on the board. He received a Lifetime Impact Award from Ginny Thomas in 2019 and recently filed an amicus brief before the Supreme Court in support of Mississippi's ban on nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. In April 2020, when Ginny Thomas was serving as one of 8 members on the CNP Action Board, it was chaired by Kelly Shackelford, the president and CEO of First Liberty, a faith-based litigation group that is currently involved in several major cases before the court. Last week, to the surprise of many observers, the court agreed to hear a case in which First Liberty is defending a football coach at a public high school in Washington state who was fired for kneeling and praying on the 50-yard line immediately after games. Richard Katsky, the legal director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, who is defending the school board, told me that the case was huge and could overturn 50 years of settled law. Shackelford's group is also the co-initiator of another case before the court, a challenge to a Maine law prohibiting the state from using public funds to pay parochial school tuition for students living in areas far from public schools. In addition to these cases, First Liberty has filed lawsuits that challenge COVID-19 restrictions on religious grounds, an issue that has come before the court, and Ginny Thomas and Shackelford have served together on the steering committee of the Save Our Country Coalition, which has called COVID-19 health mandates unconstitutional power grabs. In a phone interview, Shackelford told me that he couldn't see why Ginny Thomas's work with him posed a conflict of interest for Justice Thomas. "It's no big deal if you look at the law on this," he said. It would be different, he argued, if there were a financial interest involved, or if she were arguing First Liberty's cases before the court herself. But, he said, almost everyone in America is connected through 6 degrees of separation. Another of Ginny Thomas's fellow directors on the CNP Action Board in 2020 was J. Kenneth Blackwell, a former Ohio Secretary of State who is tied to one of the most consequential gun cases currently under consideration by the Supreme Court. In 2020, he was on the National Rifle Association's board of directors, and at the time, the gun group's official affiliate in New York was challenging the state's restrictions on carrying firearms in public spaces. Earlier this term, the court heard a related challenge, and a decision is expected later this year. Blackwell didn't respond to an interview request. Meanwhile, the website friendsofnra.org currently boasts that a winner of its youth competition had the opportunity to meet with the wife of current Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. For lawyers involved in cases before the Supreme Court, it can be deeply disturbing to know that Ginny Thomas is an additional opponent. In 2019, David Daniele, the visiting lecturer at Yale Law School, was a deputy legal director of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which had submitted an amicus brief in a gay rights case before the court. He told me he was acutely aware that Ginny Thomas and other members of the Council for National Policy loathed the Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks right-wing hate groups. In 2017, CNP Action directed its members to commit to issuing one new post on Facebook and Twitter each week about the Southern Poverty Law Center to discredit them. In Thomas's leaked 2018 speech to the Council for National Policy, she denounced the SPLC for calling the Family Research Council, which is militantly opposed to LGBTQ rights, a hate group. For Daniele, the idea that a justice's spouse belonged to a group that had urged its members to repeatedly attack his organization was counter to everything you'd expect if you want to get a fair shake before the court. He explained, these activities aren't just political. They're aimed at raising up or denigrating actors specifically in front of the Supreme Court. She's one step away from holding up a sign in front of her husband saying, this person is a pedophile. Daniele went on, the justices sit literally above where the lawyers are. For these people to do the job they were tasked with, they have to maintain that level. But this degrades it, mocks it, and threatens it. He warned, since the court doesn't have an army, it relies on how it behaves to command respect. Once the veneer cracks, it's very hard to get it back.
If you enjoyed this production,
I felt, my royal family, that it was very necessary to listen to that audio. And what I was thinking was the undue influence, or let's say the nature of Esau's woman. Because they spoke in there that the way she get down, if you ain't 1,000% in her corner, she can become quite volatile and you're deemed the enemy. And many of us have said the racism or the isms in America stems from the enemy's woman. She is the first teacher of the child. And as the wrath slowly descends in her world, we're going to continue to see her displaying her nature in the streets of America. We're already seeing it. So this really gives a laser focus on her nature. And she's been getting away with 30 plus years. And then she's married to this Coon that she has undue influence on. And he don't want her wrath because they sleep in the same roof. It shows you how vicious this barren bitch continues to be in a dying system. I'm going to leave it right there because this is quite lengthy, my royal family. So do what you do at the end of the day. Render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.